We're going to look at basic operations using the TI graphing calculator right now. First I want to turn it on, and I'll hit clear or quit to get us into the regular screen. Quit is above the mode key, and if you're in a screen that you don't like, clear or quit usually works. Alright, let's look at entering fractions first. I'm making sure I got a pen first before I do this. To enter fractions, we want to use the divide key, and to see the result as a fraction, we're going to use the Math 1 key. So let's look at this fraction entered. Let me make the calculator just a little bit bigger here so you can see it better. There you go. Alright, and so I'm going to start by entering 30/35. And if I want to put that in as a fraction, I put 30 divided by 35. And then I hit enter. Now if I hit enter right away, I'm going to get a decimal. But I can go to Math 1, the Math key, number 1 is fractions, and I either hit a 1 or just hit enter because it's on 1, and hit enter again, and it will change that to a fraction, reduced to lowest terms. Normally if you put a fraction in, it will always reduce it to lowest terms. I could have gone directly from 30 divided by 35 to a fraction answer by hitting Math 1 before I entered it, and it would have just gone right to the fraction answer. And I can go from the answer to a decimal by going to Math 2, and it'll change it back to a decimal, and I could change it back to a fraction again by hitting Math 1 again. So you have that option. On the TI-83 or 84 Plus, you can enter decimals and get their fraction equivalents using the Math menu. We're going to enter 0.45, 45 hundredths, and go to Math 1, fractions, and hit enter, and you'll get the fraction equivalent. It generally does this for terminating decimals that have like 2, 3, or 4 decimal places. If you get out to really long decimal fractions, it doesn't always do that. Okay? You can even do this for repeating non-terminating decimals. You must extend the decimal fraction past the end of one line on the calculator. For instance, if we want to enter 0.333, the non-terminating decimal, we'll just put a whole lot of 3's there. So I'll start 0.3333, and I'll just keep making 3's until it wraps around. And then I'll hit Math 1, enter, and the calculator assumes it's going on forever, and it gives me exactly the fraction 1/3. If I enter the, and that is what the non-terminating decimal 0.3 with repeating 3's forever is equal to. If I do this other fraction, which has repeating 5/6, if I put 0.56, and I just keep hitting 5/6, 5/6 until it wraps around the end of the line, and then hit Math 1, enter, I'll get that it's exactly equal to 56/99. In order to enter mixed numbers, the improper fraction is used. At least I find that the easiest way to do them. And when fractions are part of an expression involving division, it is necessary to enclose the fractions in parentheses so that the division is not confused with the fraction bar. All right, let's perform the operations indicated on the calculator. 5/6 plus 1 over 8 can just be entered from left to right and from top to bottom as it is written. We start with the 5, divide by 6, hit the plus for add, and then 1 divided by 8. And before we finish, we hit Math 1 to specify that we'd like a fraction answer. If you forget that and get the decimal answer, it's fine. You can always go back and change the decimal answer to a fraction. So I hit enter and it gives me my answer, 23/24. The next problem though, 7 2/3 minus 2 6/7, you would first want to change 7 2/3 to 23. 23 over 3 minus 2 times 7, 14 plus 6, which is going to be 20 over 7. Alright, so before you put it in the calculator, you want to have it written using fractions. Alright, and so then pull your calculator up and just enter 23 divided by 3 minus 20 divided by 7, and again say Math 1, enter for a fraction answer, and it's 101 over 21. Now if you want to make a decimal out of that, or make a mixed number out of that, you can specify that by going to changing it to a decimal first. Math 2, enter, and you can see there's 4 holes in it, so on your paper write equals 4, and then on your calculator you got to do something too, because it's not exactly 4. Alright, take the 4 out of the picture by subtracting 4, enter, and then that just leaves the fraction remainder. Hit Math 1 to change the fraction remainder there to a fraction, and you'll see it's 4 and 17 over 21. Alright, let's do the next problem. 5/12 times 4/5. You can just enter that as it is. 5 divided by 12 times 4 divided by 5, Math 1, enter, and it'll give you your answer, 1/3. But the next problem, it has 2 complicating features here, the division and the fact that it's a mixed number. Let's deal with the mixed number first. 6 times 9 is 54 and 4 is 58, so we have 58 over 9 divided by 2 times 3 is 6 and 2 is 8 over 3. Now remember that this is division and we're using a divide key for our fractions, and that causes a conflict in here with order of operations. So to avoid any errors when you're using division and fractions at the same time, you put a parenthesis around the fractions. Alright, sorry I lost my stylus and somewhere in my room, but I don't know where it is, so I'm doing this with a mouse. Alright, so if you put the parentheses there, then and you're using fractions instead of mixed numbers, then you can just go ahead and enter it into the calculator, and it'll give you your answer. So let's go ahead and enter it exactly as it's written. Parentheses 58 divided by 9, close parentheses, divided by, open parentheses, 8 divided by 3, close parentheses, and hit Math 1, enter, and we get 29 over 12. Now you can either change that to a mixed number in your mind. I'll put it down for first. 29 over 12. I'll do it on the calculator just to reinforce what we saw a minute ago. Alright, so let's look at it. Let's change it to a decimal first. Oh. Excuse me, let me clear that. Math 2 for decimal, enter. We can see it has 2 holes in it. Write down the 2. And on the calculator, you're going to subtract the 2 so that it just leaves the fraction remainder there. So hit -2, enter, and you'll get the fraction remainder, which we can now change to a fraction by hitting Math 1, enter. And it's 2 5/12 then. Alright, so that is it for the operations with fractions. Make sure that if you're doing division involving fractions, that all of your fractions are enclosed in parentheses, or you will get a wrong answer, because the order of operations will not be protected then. Order of operations are performed as a matter of course on the calculator. It follows the order of operations. So in most situations, you just enter the expression from left to right. Let me go ahead and clear this. The first expression here can be entered in that fashion. We'll just enter it and it'll give you the answer, and it would agree with the answer you would get if you worked it by hand. 18 minus, and note that I used minus there. There's also a negative button down by the enter key. A negative is in front of a number. If it's between two numbers, you use the minus. Alright, so this is 18 minus 2, open parentheses, 3 plus 4, close parentheses, enter, and it will give you your answer. If we want to enter the second expression, remember that you have to have the parentheses around the denominator. So the first thing, I would always advise putting those in with a pencil around it before you actually put it into the calculator, because if you see it with your eyes, you're more likely to get it in there right. Okay, so let's go ahead and enter that. And to enter that, we would start by entering the 8, because it's only the denominator that requires a parentheses there, because there's an operation going on in the denominator, but the numerator only has a single number in it. And this holds true even if you have x's and y's in your numerator or denominator. A single x wouldn't need a parentheses, but something happening like any operation occurring in the numerator or denominator would require a separate parentheses. Alright, so let's enter 8 divided by, open parentheses, 9 minus 5, close parentheses, and hit enter. And of course it gives us 2. Note that the fraction bar is a natural grouper. It separates the numerator from the denominator. But when you're writing it on a line like we just did up here, we put the slanted line for a division symbol and it can't really tell where the fraction begins or ends unless you put the parentheses in it. Okay. To evaluate this expression with a fraction, we would need two sets of parentheses because both the denominator and numerator have operations occurring in them. So we would put a parentheses with our pencil, we'd put a parentheses around, I'll try that again. Put a parentheses around the numerator and put one around the denominator. And then we would go and enter it into the calculator exactly as it's written. Turning the calculator on, we'd hit left parentheses 10 plus 8 close parentheses divided by open parentheses 5, I put a 2, I'll have to clear that out, 5 plus 4 close parentheses, enter. To evaluate exponents, we use the x squared key. Let's evaluate the square of 4.5. We would enter 4.5 first, and then we'd hit the x squared key, which is along the left side of the calculator, right about midway, and hit enter. To evaluate the square of 1/2, we definitely need the parentheses around 1/2. Put open parentheses, 1 divided by 2, close parentheses, hit the square key, and then if you want the fraction answer, you're going to have to specify with hitting the math key and then 1 and hit enter, and you get 1/4. To evaluate exponents that are bigger than 2, we use the caret key, which is located on the calculator above the divide sign and is shaped like an arrow pointing up. Alright, so to find the cube of 4.5, we would enter 4.5 and then we would hit the caret key and follow it by a 3. If you have a more recent calculator than I have, that would actually show the exponent up in the exponent position. You would need to use the right arrow to get back down to the typing line. And then you hit enter, and there's the value, 91 and 125 thousandths. Remember that when you're using a mixed number, you have first got to change it to an improper fraction. So we would take this and rewrite it as 4 times 8, which is 32, and 5 is 37 over 8. And it is in parentheses, so we'll put the parentheses around it and then raise it to the 5th power. And so we would enter open parentheses, 37 divided by 8, close parentheses, caret key to raise to the 5th power, and hit enter. Now if you don't want that as a decimal, if you want it as a fraction, you would hit math 1, enter. Before I do that, let's write down equals 2116, because we really should subtract that and make it into a mixed number. And so let's, instead of doing that, let's clear that line and put minus 2116 and just look at the fraction part. Now sometimes for these long ones it's not going to change it for us. We can try though. Math 1, enter. I suspected it wouldn't. That's actually a rounded off position, that last value that's kept. So the best that we can do there is the answer that we were shown, 2,116, and round it to round the fraction to whatever position that you please. So I'm going to put it as approximately 0.21. And I'll put a little dot here to mean approximately. Okay. Sometimes an answer is too long to display on the calculator, and it'll be written on the calculator in scientific notation, especially when you're dealing with exponents. Let's look at a couple examples of this and see what to do. If you have 12 to the 12th power, which would be entered as 12 raised to the 12th power, and you hit enter, you get 8.916100448 e to the 12th. What does that mean? It means that you need to move the decimal point 12 places to the right of where it is presently. So usually you do that by writing the number down. Okay, and I'm going to type this one here. And that would be 8, I want to make sure I get it right, 0.916100448, and it's followed by e to the 12th, and that's, you'll be studying scientific notation more at a later time, but just for the sake of being able to do this, let's make it a little bit bigger. So it's easy to see. And I want to double check that I copied it right. Alright, now we've got to move that 12 places to the right to get the actual value of the number. So we're going to move it around the 916100418. We need to move it farther than that. We're going to have to add 3 zeros on the end of that, because that's only 9 digits. So what that's telling you is the decimal point is actually, we've got to move it from all the way over to the behind that last 0. So this is a pretty big number. And then we fill in with commas. We've got thousands, millions, billions. We've actually got trillions here. 8,916,100,448,000. Similar thing can happen when you have a fraction to begin with and you're raising it to an exponent. Let's look at this, 0.06, and this is being raised to the 8th power. And these numbers get very tiny very quickly. And we have this number 1.679. I think I can copy this one. Let's try it. 1.6799616. And it says e to the negative 10. When you see something like that, you're going to move the decimal point 10 places, but in the opposite direction, which is this way. Well, to do that, we're going to have to go around the 1 and put 9 zeros there, which makes a very small number. And I don't even know what the number is, but if you're going to accurately represent it, you've got to put those 9 zeros, and then the 1, and then the 6, and the 79616. And so it just tells you how to move the decimal point to get the actual value of the answer. when the number itself won't fit on the screen. And you also should know that the last digit that's kept, which is the 8 in the first answer, the 6 in the second answer, is a rounded off digit. We're going to finish this discussion with evaluating square roots using the square root key on the calculator. That's located along the left side above the x squared key. To access the second meaning of a key, which is written above a key, you hit the second key first. So when we go to do the square root of 81, we're going to hit the square root key. Let's clear this first. By hitting second and then the x squared. And notice how it puts a parenthesis there. We'll always close that parenthesis after the number to indicate where the square root ends. So the square root of 81, we'll hit close parentheses, and then we'll hit enter. And we get 9. Now let's do the second example, which is the square root. So we'll hit second square root, and this time it's of 0.81. Close parentheses and hit enter. And finally we want the square root of a fraction, and we definitely want a parentheses at the end of that, but it's going to come up automatically, so whether or not you put it on your paper is not that important here. So let's hit second square root, and then we're going to put 4/9, so it'll be 4 divided by 9, close parentheses to end the square root, and hit enter. And if you want the fraction value of that, we can hit Math 1, enter, and it gives you 2/3.